If the man you love looks you in the eyes and swears he's hundreds of miles away, but you see him holding another woman's hand just down the street, which part do you believe, the eyes or the lie? It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when my life tilted on its axis. I was in the kitchen, chopping carrots for dinner, the warm scent of chicken broth filling the air. Outside, the rain tapped against the window like 1,000 tiny knocks. Mark, my husband, had left that morning for what he said was a 3-day business trip to Chicago. He kissed me on the forehead, briefcase in one hand, suit jacket draped over the other, and said, "I'll call when I land." After 7 years of marriage, I had learned to live with his frequent travels, or at least, I thought I had. The phone rang. I smiled, expecting it to be him. But it wasn't. It was Linda, my oldest friend since high school. "Claire." Her voice trembled, almost breaking. My heart tightened. "Linda? What's wrong?" She hesitated. I could hear the hum of background noise wherever she was. I don't know if I should tell you this," she said, almost whispering. "Tell me what?" I demanded, setting down the knife. "I'm at the Hilton downtown. Claire, I just saw Mark, but he wasn't alone. He was with a woman, and they were holding hands." For a moment I thought she must be mistaken. "That's impossible. He's in Chicago." "I thought so too," she said quickly. "But I swear I'm looking at him right now. He's here, in our city, and he's not in a meeting." The sound of her words hollowed out my chest. My fingers went cold. The knife slipped from my hand and clattered against the cutting board. "Don't tell anyone else," I said, my voice unsteady. "I won't," she promised. "But Claire, you need to see this for yourself." After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen staring at the half-cut carrots. Memories flooded in. Mark laughing at our wedding reception, Mark holding my hand when I was sick, Mark whispering promises on our anniversary. Every memory now felt tainted, as if they belonged to someone else's life. I should have seen the signs. The late nights at the office, the phone calls he took in the hallway, the unexplained charges on our credit card, the time he smelled faintly of perfume and claimed it was from a coworker's hug. I brushed it off each time, telling myself not to be paranoid. But now I couldn't ignore it. Something inside me shifted. Instead of crying, I grabbed my purse and coat. I didn't even change out of my jeans and loose sweater. I locked the door behind me and drove downtown, rain streaking the windshield like tiny rivers. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I reached the Hilton, I parked a block away. The revolving glass doors shimmered under the yellow streetlights. People bustled in and out, dragging suitcases, chatting into phones, laughing. I wondered how many of them were living a lie, just like me. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor as I scanned the area. And then I saw him. Mark was at the far end of the bar, his tie loosened, his hand resting over the hand of a woman with sleek dark hair. She leaned toward him, smiling with an intimacy that stabbed me in the gut. He said something that made her laugh, a sound soft and private. I froze. My first instinct was to run. But another voice in my head whispered, "No, you need proof. You need the truth burned into your eyes so you never forget." I moved quietly to the shadow of a large potted plant. My phone shook in my hand as I pressed record. I zoomed in, capturing the way his thumb stroked her skin, the way he leaned closer when she whispered in his ear. After several minutes, they stood. She slid her arm through his, and together they headed toward the elevators. My stomach churned when I saw him press the button for the 14th floor. I waited for the next elevator, my pulse racing in my ears. On the way up, I gripped my phone like a lifeline, rehearsing what I might say if I confronted him. Would I scream? Would I cry? Or would I just walk away? The 14th floor was hushed, the thick carpet muffling my footsteps. The hallway smelled faintly of vanilla and disinfectant. I followed the faint sound of laughter, his laughter. At the end of the hall, I saw it. A door slightly ajar. I approached slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Through the narrow gap, I saw Mark's arms wrapped around her, his lips brushing her ear. His face, so familiar, so loved, was lit with a smile I hadn't seen in years. I stepped back before they could see me. My chest tightened, but my eyes stayed dry. I had seen enough. Turning, I walked down the hallway, my steps steadier with each stride. Something inside me had gone cold. this wasn't over, not by a long shot. When I reached my car, the rain had slowed to a mist, but my chest still felt heavy. I sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, the phone in my hand, the recorded video still playing on loop. Every detail, the way Mark leaned toward her, the way his eyes softened, burned deeper into me each time I watched it. Part of me wanted to drive home, curl up in bed and pretend this hadn't happened. But I knew I couldn't. That woman, whoever she was, wasn't just some casual fling. I could tell by the way they touched, like this wasn't the first time. I started the car, but didn't head home. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city streets, my thoughts spiraling. Where had it started? Had it been going on for months? Years? Was it during that conference in Miami last spring? My mind darted from one memory to another, piecing together every suspicious moment I'd ignored. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, unsure how to answer. I typed back, "I saw them. I have proof." Within seconds she replied, "Come to my place. You shouldn't be alone tonight." Linda lived just 15 minutes away. We'd been friends for over 20 years, through breakups, weddings, funerals. I trusted her more than anyone, or at least I thought I did. When I arrived, she was already at the door, pulling me into a tight hug. "Oh, Claire, I'm so sorry," she whispered. I sank into her couch, clutching a throw pillow as if it could keep me from falling apart. I showed her the video. She winced, then shook her head. "That's unforgivable," she said. "You need to confront him. Don't let him spin some story." But there was something strange in her eyes, a flicker I couldn't quite name. I brushed it off. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Linda offered me tea, tissues, and every curse word she could think of aimed at Mark. But when I mentioned going to a lawyer, she hesitated. "Claire, divorce is a big step. Are you sure? Maybe you should. Wait and see what he says." Her sudden caution caught me off guard. "Wait. He's sleeping with someone else, Linda." "I know, but sometimes men do stupid things without thinking." I didn't like the way she said it, but I was too tired to press. By the time I left Linda's apartment, it was past midnight. I drove home in silence, the streets almost empty. At home, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like his footsteps. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. When Mark finally called the next morning, his voice was casual. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. How's everything?" I almost laughed at the audacity. "Everything's fine," I said flatly. "Good. My meetings are running long, but I'll be home Sunday night." "Right," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "See you then." When I hung up, my hands shook, not from sadness, but from rage. He was lying to my face, and I played along, but I wouldn't for much longer. That afternoon, I decided I wasn't going to wait for Sunday. I would go back to the hotel tonight. But this time, I wouldn't just watch from the shadows. I would make sure he saw me. I spent the day preparing. I transferred the video from my phone to my laptop and made 3 copies, one on a flash drive, one in cloud storage, and one emailed to myself. I even printed still frames from the footage. By evening, I dressed with purpose. A black fitted dress, heels, hair perfectly done, makeup sharp enough to cut. I wanted to look like the woman he should have been coming home to, not the one he was hiding from. Before heading to the hotel, I stopped by a florist. I ordered a dozen red roses with a card that read, "To my loving husband, from your devoted wife." I planned to have them delivered to his room. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp when I arrived at the Hilton. I walked through the lobby like I owned the place, heels clicking on marble. At the front desk, I smiled at the young clerk. "I'm here to surprise my husband," I said sweetly. "Mark Reynolds. He's in room 14-something, I think." The clerk typed into the computer. "Reynolds, yes, room 1412. "Perfect," I said. "Could you send these flowers up to him?" "Of course," she replied, handing the bouquet to a bellboy. I didn't follow the flowers. Instead, I positioned myself in the lobby bar where I could see the elevator doors. I ordered a glass of wine and waited. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Mark stepped out, the same woman on his arm, laughing at something he said. Then the bellboy approached them with the roses. I watched as the woman's smile faltered. Mark took the flowers, reading the card, his face drained of color. Slowly, he turned toward the bar, and our eyes met. I raised my glass, my lips curling into a cold smile. The moment Mark saw me, he froze mid-step. The bouquet of roses hung limply in his hand, the card dangling between his fingers like it weighed 100 pounds. The woman beside him, tall, dark-haired, immaculately dressed, glanced between us, confusion clouding her expression. I stood up from my seat at the bar, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I closed the distance. The low hum of lobby chatter seemed to fade. All I could hear was the steady rhythm of my own breath and the faint rustle of my dress as I walked. "Claire," Mark's voice cracked. "What are you?" I cut him off. "I thought you were in Chicago, Mark. Big meetings, important clients." I tilted my head toward the woman. "Guess she's the client?" A blush crept up the woman's neck. She took a step back, clearly wanting to disappear. "I should go," she murmured, but I stepped into her path. "Oh no, you stay? I'd love to know who you are." My voice was calm, almost polite, but every syllable carried steel. Mark's jaw tightened. "Claire, let's not do this here." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Why not? You had no problem holding her hand in public." I turned to the woman. "Did he tell you he's married, or did he skip that part?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again. That was all the answer I needed. By now, people in the lobby had begun to notice. A couple at a nearby table stared openly. Even the concierge pretended to busy himself with paperwork, but I saw his eyes flicking up every few seconds. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen, and the video I had recorded last night played loudly. The two of them at the bar, laughing, touching. I held it up so both of them could see. "You see, I like to keep receipts," I said coldly. "So when you try to lie, I can show you exactly what you did." Mark's face darkened. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, really?" I snapped. "Because it looks exactly like what it is." The woman shifted uncomfortably, then slipped away toward the exit. Mark reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't," I warned. "You've touched me enough for one lifetime." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply turned my back on him and walked toward the door. But just before I left, I stopped and looked over my shoulder. "By the way, Mark, we're done." Outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and for the first time in 24 hours I felt like I could breathe. But the relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Call me when you're alone." I got into my car and dialed immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Claire, you need to be careful," she said quickly, her voice low, almost urgent. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause. "That woman you saw him with, her name's Julia. She's not just some random fling. She works at Mark's company. She's connected to people who can make life very hard for you if you go public." I frowned. "Why do you know so much about her?" Another pause. "Because I've met her, once, at an office party. Mark introduced us." The way she said it made my skin prickle. Something about Linda's tone wasn't just worried, it was defensive. "Linda, are you hiding something from me?" I asked slowly. "No," she said too quickly. I don't want you to get hurt. These people play dirty." Her words lingered in my mind long after we hung up. I drove home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at the kitchen table, replaying the scene at the hotel over and over. Mark would be expecting me to call him, to yell, to cry, to beg for an explanation. But I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I wasn't going to move until I had a plan. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and started digging. I looked up Julia's name, found her LinkedIn profile, her company bio, even a few photos from corporate events. She had the kind of polished, perfect image that made people trust her instantly. But then I found something else. A tagged photo on social media from 2 months ago. Julia was at a private dinner party, and there, standing beside her, smiling with a glass of champagne, was Linda. My stomach dropped. The date on the photo was during one of Mark's so-called business trips. Suddenly, things clicked into place. Linda's hesitation, her warning not to rush into divorce, her strange familiarity with Julia. It wasn't just Mark who'd been lying to me. I stared at the photo on my screen, my mind reeling. Linda, my best friend, smiling beside Julia, the woman who had just walked out of the Hilton with my husband. The caption was simple: private dinner, unforgettable night. Unforgettable for who? My first instinct was denial. Maybe Linda had just happened to meet Julia at an event. Maybe it was coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. I had been ignoring my instincts for far too long, and it had cost me my marriage. I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. I zoomed in on the photo, studying every detail. The background wasn't a restaurant. It was someone's home. Expensive artwork hung on the walls, and a grand piano gleamed under the chandelier. Whoever hosted that dinner was wealthy, and Julia was clearly comfortable there. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. My phone sat on the table like a loaded weapon. I could call Linda right now, demand an explanation, but something told me I wouldn't get the truth that way. Instead, I decided to watch, to wait, to collect more than just one photo. Over the next few days, I kept my routine as normal as possible. I went to work, answered Mark's occasional texts with short, neutral replies, and avoided Linda entirely. But at night, I dug deeper into Julia's life. Through public records, I found out she had recently bought a condo in the most expensive part of the city. The down payment alone was more than most people's annual salary. Her job title didn't quite explain how she could afford it. I also discovered something else. Julia's condo building had a private underground garage, and one of the registered vehicles was a black Mercedes, the same car I had seen Linda driving once when hers was in the shop. The knot in my stomach tightened. On Thursday evening, I made a decision. I drove to Julia's building and parked across the street. I waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the entrance. At 7:42 p.m., the black Mercedes pulled in. I leaned forward, my breath catching. Linda stepped out, carrying a tote bag. She entered the building without looking around. I stayed for another hour, my mind spinning. Was Linda visiting Julia because of Mark? Or was there something else? Something even worse? The next morning, I decided to test her. I called Linda and asked if she wanted to have lunch. "Oh, I can't today," she said quickly. "Busy at work." "Right," I murmured. "Must be exhausting, all that work." There was a pause on her end. "Claire, are you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine," I said. Better than ever, actually. After we hung up, I knew two things for certain. Linda was lying to me, and I was going to find out why. That night, I called in a favor from a colleague whose brother worked in private security. He agreed to run a discreet background check on Julia and anyone closely connected to her. When the report came in the next day, I sat at my kitchen table, heart pounding as I flipped through the pages. The first few confirmed what I already knew. Julia worked at Mark's company, had recently bought the condo, attended high-profile events, but the last page nearly made me drop the folder. According to financial records, Julia had received several large wire transfers in the past year. The sender's name? Linda Matthews. I leaned back, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about Mark cheating. Linda was financially tied to Julia, and those private dinners? They weren't coincidences. They were planned. The next time I saw Linda, I wasn't going to confront her with suspicion. I was going to confront her with proof. I didn't sleep that night. The report sat on my kitchen table, pages spread out like puzzle pieces I could finally put together. Linda had been funneling money to Julia. Julia was with Mark. And Mark had been lying to me for who knows how long. But the question that gnawed at me was why? Why would Linda, my best friend of 20 years, be paying the woman my husband was cheating with? By morning, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I called Linda and told her we needed to meet. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "You tell me," I replied. "Dinner. Tonight, your place." She hesitated, then agreed. That evening, I arrived at her apartment, armed with the report in my bag and a determination that felt like steel in my bones. Linda opened the door, smiling too brightly. "Wine?" she offered. "No," I said flatly. "I'm not here to drink." We sat across from each other at her dining table. She fidgeted with her necklace, eyes darting everywhere but my face. "Linda, how long have you known Julia?" I asked. She blinked. "I told you I met her once at an office party." I slid the printed photo across the table, the one of her and Julia at the private dinner. "Try again." Her face paled. She reached for the photo, but I pulled it back. "And while you're at it," I said, pulling out the report, "maybe you can explain why your bank account shows multiple wire transfers to her." The silence stretched until it felt like it might crush us both. Finally, Linda spoke. "It's complicated." "Make it simple," I snapped. She let out a long breath as if deflating. "Julia isn't just Mark's mistress. She's my half-sister." The words hit me like a slap. "You're what?" "She's my father's daughter from an affair he had years ago. We didn't grow up together. We barely knew each other. But when she moved to the city, she reached out. She said she was struggling. I wanted to help. I stared at her, trying to process it. So you gave her money, and she repaid you by sleeping with my husband? Linda shook her head quickly. I didn't know about Mark. Not at first. I swear. But a few months ago, I found out. She told me she was seeing someone. When I realized it was him, I told her to end it. Clearly, she didn't listen, I said bitterly. Linda leaned forward, urgency in her voice. Claire, you don't understand. Julia is dangerous. She's not just some naive girl. She knows things about people in high places. She uses those secrets to get what she wants. And now she has something on Mark. A chill ran through me. What could she possibly have on him? Linda hesitated. I think it's about the company. Financial stuff. Illegal deals. If she exposes him, it could ruin him and you. I sat back, my mind spinning. So this wasn't just betrayal of the heart. It was betrayal with consequences that could destroy my life beyond the marriage. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I demanded. Because I was trying to fix it without dragging you into it, she said quietly. I thought if I paid her off, she'd walk away. I laughed, but it was hollow. You don't pay off people like Julia. You just teach them you're willing to pay. We sat in tense silence for a moment before I stood. Linda, I appreciate the truth, finally, but I can't trust you anymore. You should have told me the second you knew. She reached out as I turned to leave. Claire, please, don't go after her. She'll chew you up and spit you out. I pulled my arm away. Maybe. But at least I'll go down swinging. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel heartbroken anymore. I felt clear. I opened my laptop and began writing an email to Julia. If she wanted to play games, I was ready. The email I sent to Julia was short and sharp. We need to talk, face to face, tonight. You choose the place. She replied in less than 10 minutes. Rooftop bar at the Avalon Hotel. 9 p.m. I arrived early, dressed in the same black dress I had worn to the Hilton the night I exposed Mark. This time, it wasn't for him. It was armor. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt endless, each floor bringing me closer to the woman who had turned my marriage into a battlefield. Julia was already there, sitting at a table near the edge, the city skyline glittering behind her. She looked exactly as she had in the hotel lobby, perfect, poised, and entirely in control. Claire, she said with a faint smile, I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure you'd actually answer, I replied, taking the seat across from her. We didn't waste time. I know about the money from Linda, I said. Her smile didn't falter. Of course you do. She's a terrible liar. And I know you've been using Mark, but what I don't understand is, why? Julia leaned back, swirling her wine. Men like Mark are predictable. He wanted excitement. I gave it to him. In return, I got information. Valuable information. My stomach tightened. Information about what? The company. Offshore accounts. False invoices. Enough to make the SEC very interested. I stared at her. So this was never about love, she laughed softly. Love? Please. I don't even like him, but he was useful. And when he wasn't, I was ready to move on. That's when Linda got nervous and started paying me to disappear. Her words burned in my chest. So, you played all of us. I didn't play Linda, she said with a shrug. She's family. I gave her a chance to protect you, but she's too sentimental. The calm in her voice was infuriating. What do you want from me, Julia? She tilted her head, studying me. I want you to walk away from Mark quietly. No divorce drama, no public accusations. You get your clean break, and I keep my secrets and his safe. I took a slow sip of water, masking the fact that my hands were trembling under the table. And if I don't, then I release everything. He goes down, you go down with him. Simple. For a moment, I let the silence hang between us. Then I reached into my bag and placed a small voice recorder on the table. Her eyes narrowed. Thank you, Julia, I said calmly. You've just confessed to blackmail, corporate espionage, and fraud, and I have it all recorded. Her composure cracked for the first time. You wouldn't dare. I already did, I said, standing. Copies are in safe hands. If anything happens to me or anyone I care about, it all goes to the police. I didn't wait for her reply. I walked away, my heels steady on the wooden floor. The elevator doors closed behind me with a satisfying click. The next morning, I called Mark. We're done, I told him. I have a lawyer, and you'll be hearing from them. He tried to protest, but I hung up before he could spin another lie. Then I called Linda. It's over, I said. Julia won't bother us again, but we're not friends anymore, Linda. Not after this. She started crying, but I didn't let it sway me. Trust, once broken, is rarely repaired. 2 weeks later, my divorce papers were filed. I sold the house, took my share of the assets, and moved into a small but bright apartment in the heart of the city. My life looked nothing like it had before, but for the first time in years, it was mine. Sometimes at night, I replay that moment in the hotel lobby. The shock on Mark's face when he saw me, the way everything changed in an instant. That was the night I stopped being the woman who waited at home, believing the lies. I'm not naive anymore. And I'm not afraid, because I learned something through all of this. The most dangerous thing you can give a woman isn't heartbreak, it's clarity.